So welcome, Sangeeta. It's really exciting to have you as part of South Asian Heritage Month. And today we're focusing on India and we'll be focusing on literature. So I'll just introduce myself quickly. My name is Isabelle Kenyon. I run Fly on the Wall Press, which is a publisher based in Manchester. And we love to publish political books which have something to say about society. And I certainly feel that Sangeeta's novel that we're going to talk about today does do that. So Sangeeta, would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, Isabelle. Firstly, thank you for inviting me. So I'm Sangeeta. I'm originally from a city called Pune in India. And I came to the UK in 2000 for a job. And I've been living in the UK since then. And yeah, that's it really. I work for a company in London currently.
Amazing. So the novel that we got coming out of Fly on the Wall is called Disobedient Women, and I love the title of this one. And so it's out on Friday, 25th of November this year. And it confronts issues of religion, bigotry, sex and politics. And so Disobedient Women tells the tale of interwoven stories of two families and their battle of ideologies. And it focuses on modern day India, so set in Pune, which obviously Sangeeta knows a lot about, and the western state of Maharashtra. And I wondered, which might be potentially obvious to you, but why did you choose to set the book there?
Yeah, so I was born in Pune. I spent many years of my life there, and it's a city I know best. It's known for its progressive values. So I thought it best to write about what I know, and that's the reason why I set it in Pune.
Amazing. They always say write about what you know so that authenticity comes across. And it certainly does in this book. And so the main character, called Aparna, is a rationalist and an anti-superstition campaigner. And so you're writing a character who's both brave and an influential feminist. And I wondered if you were inspired when you were writing, maybe subliminally, by any modern day feminists in India. And if not, whether you've seen any popular feminist campaigners at the moment or in the past in India that you feel have a little bit of Aparna's spirit?
Well, I was inspired by the Indian rationalists because they are that rare breed who are trying to spread rationality in a country that is besotted by religion. And 4 of these rationalists have been assassinated. So allegedly by Hindu fundamentalists. One of them was from Pune. He was known as Dr. Narendra Dabolkar. He was an anti-superstition campaigner, and he traveled to remote villages trying to spread the anti-superstition message. And for this, he was killed. Another one of them was a woman, a feminist, an activist and a journalist, and she was assassinated as well. And the person who murdered her said that he murdered her because he felt that his religion was under threat. So definitely the rationalists have been my inspiration. But then again, I see all these wonderful Indian feminists all over India, and they are making their voice heard. They're raising their voice against oppression, against misogyny. So that's really inspiring as well. And I'm sitting here in the UK while writing the book, but they are raising their voices in India. And sometimes it can be dangerous to do that. So yeah, definitely. They've been an inspiration as well.
Absolutely. And so the theme this year for South Asian Heritage Month is Journeys of Empire. And I wondered, in the book, there are conflicts of Muslim faith and Hindu faith, and the conflicts within Disobedient Women stem somewhat from the history of empire and migration, and to what extent, whether that's true, or if you think it does influence those kind of conflicts between faiths.
Well, I think the British colonial rule can be blamed for a lot of things, like, for example, the divide and rule policy, or, the issue of Kashmir was left unresolved, and the partition, of course. But in particular, we have these 2 archaic laws, which are, a legacy of the colonial rule. One is the sedition law, and the other one is the blasphemy law. And I think these 2 laws have no place in a modern democracy like India. So I feel we should just do away with these 2 laws. And but other than that, I don't think it's right to blame the British for what's happening in India right now, because we did get independence from the British, but now we are kind of held hostage by an ideology of hate, the ideology of Hindutva. which is not to be confused with Hinduism. Hindutva is the militant form of Hinduism. It's a more fundamentalist form of Hinduism. And it seems to have permeated every sphere of Indian life. And it's all about religion all the time and showing Muslims their places and so on. So I think that's the bigger fight right now.
I'm really glad that you're writing about it. I haven't read any books that are taking modern day and the current conflict. So it's a really interesting one to learn about as well and to hear your perspective. And in the novel, that's not the only controversial thing. There's quite a lot of controversial topics. So your character Kashi, so a young character, is in love with science, but she's also in love with girls. And I wondered if you see any progression in LGBTQ visibility and rights within India. So in the novel, there's public displays of protest and they come up against violence from the police. And I wondered if you see marches in India and when they take place, do they come up against police brutality as well?
Well, LGBTQ sex was decriminalized in 2018. So that was a big step forward. But a lot more remains to be done because marriages or civil unions are not allowed to same-sex couples. They cannot adopt, they can't opt for surrogacy and so on. And there's a lack of societal acceptance as well. Things are progressing very, very slowly. And as far as police brutality is concerned, there haven't been any specific instances of police brutality against LGBTQ community. And it's very difficult to generalize because India is such a vast country. But like I said, we still have a long way to go as far as, LGBTQ community live, for them living a life of dignity. So there's still a long way to go.
Definitely, 2018 is far too close to home.
True.
And I wondered as well, so we've got a lot of controversial themes like we were saying in the book, so I wonder how you hope the book is going to be received and whether that's going to be a different reception from the UK and India.
Well, as far as Britain is concerned, I just hope that the book does not lie a silent and the book does not die a silent and lonely death here. I hope the British people find it interesting to do. It offers an insight into what it is to be an atheist feminist in India, ruled by the Hindu right wing. So I hope they'll find it interesting to read about this. And as far as India is concerned, I hope it resonates with the Indians, because I think what we need right now is more irony, more humor, more satire, and so on. Right now, as things stand in India, every frivolous comment, every frivolous article is construed to be offensive, and people are getting arrested and jailed for blasphemy and so on. So I hope it's received in the right spirit.
Definitely. I think we could all do with a bit of satire right now. I was wondering, in general, so taking an outside view at the industry, do you think that visibility of Indian writers is getting better in terms of bookshop visibility or prize lists? Or do you think there's more to be done? And if there is, then is there any way that we can ensure that publishing houses or judges are promoting a diverse list of writers and stories?
Well, I think the British publishing industry still remains predominantly white, and be it the editors, publishers, or the literary agents. So again, it's not a level playing field. A lot more needs to be done. But at the same time, we have the Own Voices campaign. There are lots of competitions and initiatives targeting the BAME community. So yeah, things are changing. But what I would really like to see is, we have this kind of template that is given to us, whether it's by the publishers, editors, or even the MFA creative writing courses. And you have to stick to the template. You can't go outside. You can't think outside the template, can't think outside the box. But I feel this is a creative industry. Different cultures have different ways of telling stories. So even the reader should, be accepting of the differences. And I think that needs to change a little.
So is that in terms of the Western structure of a story?
Yeah, the West is used to a certain way of telling a story, which may not necessarily be true in other cultures, the show versus tell and so on, it's slightly different in other cultures. So I think you have to be slightly accepting of the different ways of telling a story. That's one thing. Otherwise, it's all standardized. You just
Yeah.
everyone sticks to the same template. So.
I find that fascinating as well. I was looking at Eastern ways of storytelling, and how that's different. And I was thinking, oh, this is really different when we look at it, and if we don't sort of look at the way we're telling stories, like you say, in the structure, we're never really going to have something groundbreaking,
Yes. Yeah. And after all, it's a creative industry, so you should be allowed to, stretch the boundaries a little.
Yeah, no, I love that. And lastly, I wondered, this is a loaded question because you probably have so many, but maybe at the moment, who your favorite Indian writers are and why?
Okay, this is my favorite question and the easiest one to answer. My favorite Indian writer, there's one particular book that I really, really love. It's A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry. Have you read it?
I've not, but I'm going to add it to my list now.
You must read it. It's a fascinating book, and it offers you a picture of India like no other book. And it's a devastating book. I can guarantee that you'll cry after you finish reading. No. And I remember I was reading it. I had around 100 pages still left, but I had to go to work the next day. But I just couldn't keep the book away, and I decided to take leave of work the next day, and I finished that book. And of course, I cried and cried and cried. But it's one of the best books that I've read so far.
Oh, gorgeous. You never forget a book that makes you cry.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta, and very much looking forward to the book coming out on the 25th of November. And pre-orders will be up on the 14th of August, so keep your eyes out for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Isabelle. Thank you. Great interview. Thank you.
Hello, Sree. How are you today?
Hi, Isabelle. It's so good to be here today. Thank you very much.
Lovely to have you, and it's really great to be part of South Asian Heritage Month. So today we're focusing on India, and today we're going to talk about your new book, and we'll be focusing on Cracked Asphalt, which is a poetry collection. So it's great to have both poetry and novels in the discussion today about Indian literature. And so I wondered, to start off with, we should introduce ourselves. So I'm Isabelle Kenyon, and I run Fly on the Wall Press, and we're based in Manchester. And it's a pleasure to be publishing Sree this August. And Sree, would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here, and it's such a privilege to be here to talk about my work, to talk about who I am. I'm from India. I was born and brought up in Calcutta, but I have moved across my country. I worked in Chennai, Bombay, Delhi. I moved to Dublin in 2019 to do my master's in creative writing with University College Dublin. And after my master's, I realized that actually when I moved, I was more focused on prose. But once I completed my master's, I actually wanted to try my hand at poetry. And I found that it gave me a different kind of freedom in expressing myself, and that's how the chapbook came about.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. And it's out really soon as well, so it's on the 12th. And you were talking a little bit about why you moved, and for me, the chapbook is capturing this feeling of displacement during emigration from Kolkata to Dublin. And I know that, like you say, you relocated to do the MA in creative writing at the University College Dublin. And I wondered if that meant that you found that there were more opportunities for study in Dublin, and if you emigrated, then you would have more opportunities to explore writing.
Definitely, that was one of my primary concerns while I was even considering the move. I have moved in India several times, and with every move, I started a different life. I got integrated into a different culture. So the move per se from India to Dublin was not a very intimidating task for me. However, my primary concern was to be taken seriously as a creative practitioner, you know. Every time, so I used to be a journalist back home in India. I was in that profession for 10 years. But every time I spoke to somebody about being a poet or a writer or a novelist, it was taken as, you know, yeah, you can do it on the side. You can do it, it's a hobby. It can't be a profession. You can't be a full-time creative practitioner. It, the process in India is much more difficult than I found the process to be here in Ireland. Ireland has this exciting culture. It has the openness. It has the feasibility of becoming who I wanted to become. But don't get me wrong, there are hurdles here as well. It is just that here I could start afresh. Whereas in India, there was a lot of who I used to be following me. So the first question I would encounter was, why do you want to give up journalism? You know, so it felt like I was betraying myself back home. Whereas here, I didn't have any of that. I could start anew.
And in literally the opening poem, you've written that in the beginning, I dreamt of going home, Bay of Bengal, warmed by the tropical sun until the borders closed. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you meant by that.
So when I did come here in 2019, in August, I, like everybody else, we always want to go back home to visit our families or visit the nostalgia that we have. But because of pandemic, because of COVID into 2020, early 2020, that option was taken away from me. So that that nostalgia always just remained a nostalgia. I could not physically go back to where I wanted to revisit the memories that I wanted to. It was a difficult space to know that the option was gone. You know, where you are 6 months into a new country and you have not even established yourself, or you haven't even made any friends, to be honest. You know, you are just there by yourself as an entity. I was with my husband, so I was lucky that I had a companion. But other than the two of us, our entire life kind of grinded to a halt, which it did for a lot more people. And the fact that we could not go back home seemed a lot more bleak than it would have otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, COVID was an awful and isolating time, and to do that during it being a new country is even more isolating.
Yes,
but I'm really interested in how you're exploring identity in the collection, and there's a particular line that I loved and that stuck out to me, and it says, easier to love in Dublin, here I'm not pretending to be someone else.
Yeah, I love that line too.
So it seems like you're talking about freedom, and perhaps that freedom for you wasn't possible in Kolkata, and I wondered why that was.
Yes, so first of all, I think being back home, I think most of us can relate to it. You're always identified as someone's daughter, as someone's sister, as someone's niece, and there are it's actually very difficult to come out as your own person. It is very difficult to carve an area for yourself, especially in say the South Asian family structure. You know, it is always that you have a tradition, a lineage behind you there, where you are always pretending to meet somebody else's expectations. And somewhere along the pretensions of different roles, of the different versions of yourself, you tend to lose who you are. You tend to lose yourself. And then you go into the depths of questions of existence and survival and who you really are. And, even the simplest of expressions of love for your partner can be dictated by the expectations of your family, of your friends, of society at large. And when I moved away from that, there was a definite sense of freedom that came with it, because then I could set my own ground rules. Then I could even dare to hope for a different kind of life.
Funnily enough, this society expectations and the weight of it really fits into what I wanted to ask you next, because in the collection you hint at a bad girl's question, good women stay. And I wondered, is that reflective of your experience of Indian culture? Is there a culture of how women should behave?
Primarily, yes. Although I come from a largely cosmopolitan background, I've grown up in a city. I've always lived in cities. So talking only from my personal experience, women have very little agency. There are, of course, different class discriminations in society, but as a gender role, women have a lot less say, a lot less freedoms, a lot less independence in Indian society. I would be lucky, I am lucky, and it would be amiss for me not to mention it, that I grew up in a largely, comparatively with more freedom in my life. I was allowed to go to different cities and work in my profession. It was, of course, with permission, but I was given that permission. So I would say I was lucky in that sense. Whereas a lot of my friends and the people around me had to fight their way through. So even when I decided to quit journalism and come to India, it was a huge fight for me. It wasn't an easy move for me to make. There was a lot of backlash, especially from family, primarily because they didn't understand where this was coming from, but also it is not the acceptable thing for a woman to do. So for me, for instance, as a single woman, I could see that the dynamics between my family and myself change after I got married. So the status of a married woman is much different from the status of an unmarried woman within the same structure. So in all these little ways and all these, I would say, big ways as well, you come to realize that once you move out of the home, out of that culture, and come into another culture, which is not your own. So it is. So the Irish culture over here, as much diverse and cosmopolitan it is, I am still not completely integrated into it. I'm still an outsider. But being that outsider gave me a lot of freedom than the belonging of home.
I wondered, what do you think it would take for you to feel that you're integrated into Irish culture?
For me, it would be a life without fear. Even today, I stumble with my social interactions because of what I look like, how I sound, a perceived judgment, even when it's not there, but the fear of it. So the day that I can go out and not have that fear, that would be the day I would feel integrated.
Thank you for sharing that. I know it wasn't a pre-prepared question, but I just thought, what can we do to make people feel integrated into, a society that has multiple different cultures operating in one, So that just, that struck me. Thank you for answering that. And I wondered, for you, obviously you're writing this collection in English, but I wondered, is there something enjoyable about writing poetry in Bengali, and have you ever done that?
To be honest, actually, coming here writing in English, I actually, a lot of people have come out and said that, oh, your English is pretty good. You know, it's a very international English, and I always keep wondering, what is that? You know, what is the language that we appreciate and the language that is undervalued? So for me, Bengali, I read Bengali, I studied Bengali, I still do read literature in Bengali, but also it was taught to me in school as well. But later on in life, as I moved out of schooling, and the more I went into journalism, which was English, and then creative writing, and again English, somewhere I realized that I had let that part of my life just slide away. And it wasn't conscious, it just happened. But now I want to bring that up back in my life. So recently, I've actually been reading Bengali literature. I've been trying to go back to the books that I have already read, feel a bit of familiarity with it, and get back into it. I am also trying to write, but in a very weird sense, because I haven't written creatively in Bengali. I feel that I am doing injustice to that language, which I don't feel about English, although English is not my first language. You know, but Bengali has a certain sentimental attachment for me, and I am still apprehensive of telling people that I do write in Bengali. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine you've got that sense of responsibility almost to write. And yeah. And I wondered, so you said that you're starting to read your favorite writers again in Bengali, and I wondered who are your favorite Indian poets at the moment, and why?
Wow. So I grew up actually reading a lot of Rabindranath Tagore and Nazrul Islam, Kobi Nazrul Islam. But I would say one of the lesser known poets from Bengal that is not hugely read in schools or talked about, and who's one of my favorite, would be Tushar Rai. His poetry I find to be illuminating but painful, and the clarity that he brings is very real for me. But other than that, I'm moving away from Bengal, I would say. Three of my favorite poets would be Kamala Das, Amrita Pritam, whose writing is in Hindi and Punjabi, and she's one of the trailblazing women poets from there. And in today's time, Gulzar, who actually writes amazing poetry, and also writes really nice songs for Bollywood.
Cool. So. I love that. Thank you so much, Sree, and I'm very much looking forward to your collection coming out. If everyone wants to read Shree's work, which of course you do, it's out on the 12th of August, and its name is Cracked Asphalt, and it's available from all good bookshops. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Sree.
Thank you so much, Isabelle. It's been a privilege over here, and I really look forward to hearing more.